Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Carl, your violinist tutor and musician. As you may know, this is my second lesson, and in my previous tutorial, I showed you how to hold your violin, like the proper way of holding your violin, and as well I also explained the shoulder rest, and I also showed you how to hold or like the different ways of how to hold your violin and where you put your bow on your violin, like all the information, all the tips that will be useful when you're still new with the violin. So if you haven't checked my first lesson, I'd advise you to go back to that video so you have a better understanding of this video. And the link is down below. Now in this lesson, I'll show you how all the different parts of the violin, and I'll explain each parts and the meaning behind them. So without further ado, grab your violin and let's get to it. You have grabbed your violin, and I'm assuming you're holding your violin right now. And I'll take you through each part of your violin. Some might think that this is irrelevant, and it isn't. And it's going to be very helpful and very important to know every single part of your violin and why it's there. And you never know why you might need it or replace it. Who knows? There are parts of your violin that you need to fix. All that reason is why I'm showing this video right now. It's relevant as I'll show you the very first part of the violin, which is the chin rest. And there are curiosity from other people wondering and asking what kind of chin rest I'm using. And my kind of chin rest is the Guarneri chin rest, which is by far the most popular, if not the most common type of chin rest. And all the rest of the chin rest comes down to preferences. Like some of you might have a different type of chin rest than mine, and some are maybe on a budget. So I'd recommend to those who can afford a expensive chin rest. I like the brands that you can buy is Molko, which here in Canada costs at around $12. My chin rest very well varies, and it depends. Some might cost higher than $12, maybe some between $25 or even $100, depending on the quality. But if you can't afford a expensive chin rest, then you can stick with the cheapest. But as time passed, and if you've been playing the violin for quite a while, you'll need to buy a higher quality chin rest. So this is my chin rest that I use. Within the tailpiece, you have the fine tuners. So most beginners will have four fine tuners, and what it does is it helps in fine tuning the strings. For violinists that have been playing the violin for a very long time and are fully experienced and that understands like everything and what they're doing, they use the pegs to tune the strings as they need it to move too much, or you can say they need to move it all the way around. And for the fine tuners, which is on the tailpiece, and if you tune it as much as you can, close to the initial tune, this is where the fine tuner is useful. And when you use the fine tuner, just do it a teeny tiny more to go before your string gets to its tune. You'll definitely find when you start playing in a practice session and just a tiny bit out of tune, this is where again you find the fine tuner come in handy, as it saves you from having to use the pegs. Now we move on the tailpiece, and this is where the strings sit and is connected. And as you may know, some students and beginners might have a tailpiece that is plastic or that is made of tin. But my kind of tailpiece is ebony, and you can replace this if you want. Replacing it with an ebony just means that everything is going to slightly change the tone of the violin, but it also means it perhaps not going to be heavy or bulky. Now that I have showed you the tailpiece and the fine tuner, we'll move on to the violin itself. So I've got a violin that resembles a antique violin from the early and mid 19th century, and it is a German violin. Back in the day, what they would do is rip out the neck of the branch peelings because they were a lot shorter than this. But it is a classical neck, and they would rip out the old neck of this violin and put it in a classical violin neck. So it was a little bit longer and a modernized type of violin to what we see and use right now. So this is an antique violin, and I use the pegs now and then because I find it that I can get a better tune. However, if you got a student or someone who is just starting to play the violin, or if they have a student quality violin, they won't be set up in quite such way, and you wouldn't pay that much money to have your peg box set up in that kind of way, which is where the fine tuners will be useful. For most of my years playing the violin, I've been using the fine tuner, as that's what my violin teacher told me. But as I got experience, I got the hang of it, using the pegs whenever I really need to tune the strings, and then use the fine tuners for the finishing touch. Now, I'll be talking about the bridge. And as you look closely, you'll notice on the bridge that it is slightly slanted a bit, and you can see that the G string is slightly higher than the E string. When you get your violin and you're setting it up, and let's put it this way, let's make it the opposite, and if the bridge is the other way around, and if the lowest part of the bridge is the G string and the higher point of the bridge is the E string, you'll need that bridge to go around. You can get a better bridge, and it's up to you. My kind of bridge is an old bear bridge. However, it comes with a semi-warning in that you can't just buy a bridge and then stick it on on the violin. The bridge has to be made to measure, the exact measure. The bridge you'll most likely use will almost or perhaps be a lot flatter and than what you got. That moment, you'll have to use a sandbox and sand it down if you do that. And you also have to be an expert or send it to a violin luthier to fit it for you. Again, you can't just buy a bridge. And for my own bridge, I don't think it will fit on my other violin that I am also using. It might fit, but the strings might lay on the fingerboard, and what I mean by that is like it will touch the fingerboard, or maybe the strings might be a little higher or maybe a little too low. And it also comes down to height of your bridge, how it's sanded down, the curvature as well. So that's the bridge. You can replace it however you like, as long as it's fitted and in the right measurement. This is the neck of the violin, and I briefly mentioned this earlier. And to put it simply, this is where you put your hand, where you shift your fingers. As you shift, you also have to move your hand, and you move it in different positions, either at the end of the neck or at the start of it, like here. Now, and for the top, you also got a scroll, and by the look of it, it looks like a scroll. While above the scroll is the peg box, and this is where the pegs are in. And as I mentioned, it is where you tune your strings. And to those who are thinking of using the pegs to tune, I'd advise you not to use them and to stick with the fine tuner, as it's a little bit more easier and doesn't really require you to twist it or to just turn it all the way around. And besides tuning the strings, this is where you also replace the strings. So like if it gets rusty and becomes unusable, and I'd recommend you to go to a shop to let them replace the strings for you, or if you want to do it yourself, why not? It's not that complicated. Going back to the middle of the violin, and in between the bridge, you'll find two F holes, which serves to transmit to the outside air of the vibrations within the body caused by the violin's resonance, ringing out with a rich tone. And inside the F holes, and if you look very, very closely, like right inside, you'll find a pole right at the middle inside the violin, and that is called sound post. And I kid you not, don't play it around, because it is fitted exactly where it's fitted. If you have a brand new violin that you just bought and then you've been using it for, I'd assume, like a few days or weeks, and you're noticing something's wrong, and as you're trying to rattle your violin around, you notice that the sound post is like shaking, then that's when you need to take it to a shop, because there's no absolute way you're getting your finger in there to sort that yourself. Once once it drops, your violin is pretty much messed up, and you can't use it as because the sound will get like nasally. And if you keep using your violin, you'll risk of breaking the entire violin. When you put the impression of the strings, you almost don't have anything inside to support the inside and the entire body of the violin. As I mentioned earlier, the bridge supports the strings, and it depends on the height, depends on how the curves, like how curvious the bridge is. It's the same thing with the sound post. The sound post supports the entire violin. It supports, and it also makes the violin sound beautiful. Much like a pole supporting a structure of a building. But if you do find your sound post broken, like if it indeed breaks, then unfortunately you'll have to go and get that repaired. If you look if you look it up, you'll see how a luthier tries to attach a sound post inside the violin, and you think they're gonna break it apart. No, rather they have a special, you can say, tweezer that is seen and angled in such a way that they just go through the F hole. It's unlikely they'll tear the entire violin apart, and well, as you may know, I'd assume it took them years to master that in putting the sound post. And from there, they'll just adjust it. That is all for this lesson about the different parts of the violin. And I hope you find this very useful, and I hope you learned a lot from it. And if you have any questions, any additional information, like anything, feel free to comment down at the comment section below and let me know if I miss anything. Until then, take care. Thank you for watching, and catch you all at lesson 3.